Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Really, really glad that you are here. We're dealing again with the birds and bees bill again, which is on the governor's desk and is going to get decided on really quickly. And we need to keep pressure on and keep fighting till the end. My name's Tim Guinea. I'm the president of Climate Action Now. I'm here with Brett Walter, who is our founder, and Matthew Vollrath, who is our content manager, and really, really excited mostly that you're here. There's nowhere I'm happier to be than in a room full of people being of service and being active. So big, big, big thanks to you. If you are here tonight, if you could grab your phone and turn it on to the camera, you're going to need that to use the QR code. If you've never been to a Climate Action Now action party before, it's a little different than a normal kind of Zoom meeting that you may be used to. You're going to hear from an extraordinary panel of experts, but while you are listening to them, we hope you will all take action to get this amazing bill passed. All you have to do is, when you have your phone, and we'll leave this up for a minute, turn the camera on your phone, point the camera at that weird looking box on the right. A link will appear. If you click on that link, that's going to take you to a bunch of actions that have been created specifically for tonight's event. So we're going to leave this up for a minute. And as you can see, on the left, we have a goal tracker that's going to track how well we're doing. Some of these actions have been up on the app. So 181 emails have already gone out. We're going to try and get up to 350 actions tonight. Climate Action Now is a free phone app, lets people take thousands of actions on the climate crisis in seconds. Every time you take an action, you get points. Every time you get enough points, we plant a tree for you. The app has been around for, I don't know, a year and 3/4, 2 years, something like that. And over 2 million messages have been sent out by users like you to industry, captains of industry and elected officials, et cetera. We've planted over 200,000 trees with your help. So before we get started, I want to take a second and thank our sponsors for tonight's event: NRDC, the Sierra Club Atlantic Chapter, the Adirondack Council, Earth Justice, the Climate Reality Project, New York State Chapters Coalition, Citizens Campaign for the Environment, and Climate Action Now. I also want to tell you that the speakers tonight will be answering questions in the second half of the evening. So please place questions in the chat. And please use the QR code, and please take action. The reason these incredible speakers are here is because they want you to do that. So let's not disappoint them. I want to welcome tonight's guest host, Jeff Perry, who is a pal of mine. I mean this so well. I think he's the most relaxed actor in America. You know him from a million things like My So-Called Life, Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, Nash Bridges. He was one of the founders of one of the most important theater companies in America, the Steppenwolf Theater. So my big, big joy to introduce Jeff. It's all yours, Jeff.
All righty. So our panel, we've got Dan Raichel, Acting Director of the Natural Resources Defense Council's NRDC Pollinator Initiative, which focuses on protecting our nation's bee populations from the ever-growing threats to their health and existence, in particular, the use of bee-toxic pesticides. Raichel was formerly co-director of NRDC's Community Fracking Defense Project and an advocate for the cleanup of industrial pollution in the New York region. Laura Colligan owns, did I pronounce that right, Laura? Oh, good. Laura Colligan owns and operates Dirt Rich Farm, a certified organic farm in Western New York, where she grows over 40 different varieties of vegetables, herbs, and fruits. She is president of the Good Farmers Guild of Western New York and a member of the Northeast Organic Farming Association's Policy Committee. Sophia Longsworth has worked at Clean Plus Healthy for almost 2 years. She works on toxics policies, including PFAS and lead, organizes advocacy days with our allies, including the annual Earth Day Advocacy Party, that is, and provides support to NYS legislators championing our legislative priorities. She also co-leads the National Cumulative Impacts and Mandatory Emissions Reductions team at Coming Clean.
Hey, Jeff, great news. Adrian Esposito has joined us. So if you could.
Adrian Esposito, co-founder of Citizens Campaign for the Environment, CCE, which started in 1985. CCE is a nonprofit organization working in New York and Connecticut to protect our natural resources and public health. Ms. Esposito is widely considered an expert on environmental protection issues. She's received national, state, and local awards recognizing her work on environmental and public health protection.
Okay. I think maybe that's my cue to take it away.
I think so.
Okay. I'm going to try and share my screen here, hopefully with no technical difficulties. Can everyone see that? So, hi, everyone, and thanks, Jeff. So, as mentioned, I'm Dan Raichel. I work with NRDC, and I just wanted to give a little quick background on the reason we're all here tonight by telling you a little bit about neonicotinoids, or neonics for short, why they're so problematic for bees, birds, why they're problematic for our own health, and why we think they are probably the most ecologically destructive pesticides we've seen since DDT. So what are neonics? They are neurotoxic insecticides, which means they are pesticides designed to kill bugs by attacking their nerves. And they do that by attaching to those nerves and not letting go and overstimulating the nerve until it dies. So if you've seen a bee that has been poisoned with a neonic, oftentimes that bee will start to twitch uncontrollably, right, as his nerves are firing, and then become paralyzed and keel over. But a lot of pesticides kill bees and other insects in gruesome ways. Why do we care so much about neonics? And there are three big reasons. The first is that neonics are super duper toxic to insect life. They are the most potent insecticides ever created, or among them, with just the coating on one corn seed, the neonic coating on one corn seed, capable of having enough active ingredient to kill 250,000 bees or more. And in fact, we see that neonics have made U.S. agriculture about 50 times more harmful to insect life. And that harmfulness jumps in the mid-2000s, almost exactly at the time that we see beekeepers across the country and across New York start to lose their honeybee colonies in mass. Up until that point, they were losing 10, 15% a year, mostly due to the winter cold. Since that time, they've lost 30, 40, 50% a year, and that's become the new and scary normal. And not only are they losing the bees in the wintertime, they're also losing them in the summer, which is indicating to us something new and scary is happening.
Hey, Dan, I have to interrupt for just half a second. The audience is already blown by our first goal for the evening. So let's go ahead and jump it up to 600 emails and see if we can get there.
All right, let's do it. So, what's happening to honeybees is happening more broadly, right? Honeybees are one species. New York has over 400 species of bees, and not to mention other pollinators. We know from a recent survey from the state, 40 to 60% of those pollinators are at risk of disappearing from the state. And those pollinators are not just essential to ecosystems, right? 80% of the plants on the face of the earth require bees and other pollinators to reproduce. They're also critical to food production. 1 out of 3 bites of food that we eat comes from pollination provided by bees and other pollinators. And we know our honeybees right now are very weak. We know those native pollinators are dying. We know farmers are not growing as much food. There's lower yields of crops like apples, blueberries, and cherries because we don't have enough bees. And not just the honeybees that get replaced and bred and replaced every year by beekeepers, but all of the wild bees that don't get bred and replaced every year. So second problem with neonics is that they're really good at contaminating just about everything. So they're designed to permeate plants, to get into their leaves, their pollen, their nectar, their roots, everything. And the idea is it makes the plant itself toxic. The plant itself becomes the pesticide, which means they can be applied in interesting ways. They can be sprayed, of course, and they are, but more commonly they're applied to soil or literally painted on crop seeds. And this is some neonic-treated corn seed. Here's a close-up of some different seed, but still neonic-treated. And the idea is that as that seed is growing into a plant, it literally soaks up through its roots the pesticide coating and becomes toxic. The problem is only 2 to 5% make it into that target plant. The other 95+% stay in the soil where they persist for years and years and years. And those same properties that let them get up into the plant means they're really mobile in the environment. So anytime it rains, anytime there's irrigation, lawn watering, those neonics are moving through the soil. If there are plants in the soil, those plants soak up the pesticides, they become toxic. Their pollen, their nectar. If there's a water supply nearby, that water supply becomes polluted. Same thing for groundwater. Third problem with neonics, they're all over the place. So just about every conventional corn seed is pre-treated with a neonic, not organic, conventional, and 50 to 75% of conventional soybean is pre-treated with a neonic. That's well over 1 million acres in New York, but neonics are also all over lawns, gardens, golf courses, you name it. And actually in those urban areas, they're used at much higher rates per acre, and it creates these toxic hotspots in places where people live, work, and drink water. We've seen neonic use in New York go up and up and up over the years. And this is a map just to give you a small sense of what neonic use looks like in the country. This is the use of just one neonic chemical. There are 5. This is not even the most used in New York agriculture. And this doesn't include those lawn and garden uses, right? This is just ag uses. So this is a very small picture of what neonic use looks like in New York. And if we were counting those lawn and garden uses, you better believe Westchester and Long Island would be filled in sort of a dark color. But what it does give you a sense is that these pesticides are used just about everywhere. And what's happening is they're building up year over year because they persist. They're building up in soil, and they're constantly expanding every time it rains to create ubiquitous contamination of soil, plant, water, wildlife, etc. So what is the impact of this ubiquitous contamination? Well, one, we know neonics are definitely killing bees. Again, that's not just the honeybees, which are livestock and not actually native to the US, but also the hundreds of species of wild bees that are critical to ecosystems and crop pollination. But beyond that, we know that neonics are basically hollowing out ecosystems from the bottom up. It's not just bees that are affected, it's all insect, invertebrate life. And as it turns out, a lot of other animals depend on insects. Most birds rely on insects as some part of their diet or to rear their young. So we've seen good science linking the loss of all of our insect life to mass losses of birds, particularly insect-eating birds, and there's a number of good studies on that. We've also seen the same thing in fisheries, right? Neonics get into the water. The aquatic life is literally bathing in these pesticides, and they're very toxic to aquatic life. So we see ripple effects where fisheries essentially have collapsed, where neonics have been introduced in nearby agriculture, and we see similar levels all over New York water, which are very small, by the way, given how potent these are. And this is really sort of emblematic of what's going on. EPA in May found that neonics are driving 200 plus endangered species toward extinction. I cannot emphasize what a crazy finding this is. If you know the Endangered Species Act, jeopardizing even one species is against the law. I have never seen a finding that affects so many species. And it speaks to how fundamentally destructive these pesticides are and how broad that destruction or threat is in our environment. It's worth noting that beyond bugs, neonics are also toxic to things with spines like birds and people. Just one neonic-treated corn seed has enough active ingredient to kill a small songbird, and even at levels that don't kill the bird, they interfere with their neurological systems, their ability to migrate, to find food, to navigate, their immune systems, their ability to reproduce. And where things start to get scary is when we talk about large mammals. So there was a study done on deer finding that real-world levels of neonics were associated with all sorts of birth defects and increased fawn mortality for deer that were prenatally exposed, and also sort of neurological and endocrinological effects in adult deer.
Hey, Dan, I'm jumping in one more time. We've blown through our second goal, so we've jumped it up to 750. Let's see if we can't get 750 emails out and get the governor to do something about this.
Fantastic. That's great. So, the refrain from industry after that deer study was, well, hey, deer don't have that level of pests. I mean, you can give a deer enough Mountain Dew and you'll find problems. But as it turns out, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources found that in 2019, about a third of deer from all over the state had neonics in their bodies at levels associated with those birth defects and death. And here's where it gets really scary. 2 years later, they did the same study, and those numbers jumped. Now, 2/3 of deer that they found had those levels associated with birth defects and death. And what makes it really scary is we see sort of a similar jump in neonic levels in people. Deer are large mammals, and so are we. In 2019, CDC released a study based on 2016 data, finding about half the country had neonics in their body on any given day. A more recent study of pregnant women from New York and 4 other states found over 95% of those women had neonics in their bodies, and with the highest rates in Hispanic women, but those rates rising every year of the 4-year study. So we know that this is a growing problem in the human population. And just like deer, we have studies on people, not case-controlled studies, but population studies, finding neonics associated with higher rates of birth defects of the heart and brain, autism-like symptoms, and a bunch of neurological and reproductive problems in adults. So that brings us to the bill. So the bill would get rid of about 80 to 90% of the neonics going into New York's environment every year by addressing only those uses that are either wholly unneeded or replaceable with safer alternatives. And those two categories are the neonic coatings on corn, soybean, and wheat seeds, which is the largest and most widespread use in New York. And this is according to a State Commission Cornell University study that looked at 1,100 peer-reviewed papers, it found that these coatings, despite being a problem to bees in the environment, provided no economic benefits to the farmers using them. So this makes it the largest and dumbest use of neonics in the state. The other finding of the report is that those turf and ornamental uses, again, that create those toxic hotspots in places where a lot of people live, likewise, most of the time weren't providing any benefits, but there are also safer alternatives that are just as effective. So again, the bill is a very smart and targeted bill. It's very surgical. It's just the coatings on 3 crops, no other agricultural use, not even other uses for those crops, but gets you 80 to 90% of the problem gone. It's a very smart and targeted bill based in the science. And we know that these policies work, right? Quebec has gotten rid of these seed coatings just over the border without any associated crop loss, or switching to more harmful alternatives. So what happened to the bill in New York? It passed the legislature resoundingly in June. And it was, as Tim mentioned, delivered to the Governor Hochul's desk last week. That started a 10-day clock for action. The bill must be acted on by the governor midnight Saturday, which means we have 3.5 days left to get the governor to sign this critically important bill, this nationally leading bill. We don't know what the governor's position on the bill is yet, and time is quickly running out. So the more action, the more noise we can make right now, the better. And I will stop sharing my screen there and hand over the floor.
But before we hand over the floor, we have to say that you guys blew through yet another goal. So we're going up to 900. It'll be our new goal. But fantastic work, everybody. Keep those letters going. I think it's going to Adrian. Is that right?
Sounds good to me. Good evening, everybody. And I have to say, I feel terrible delivering all of this unfortunate news a couple of days before the holidays and the new year, but it is what it is. But there actually is good news. We are negotiating the bill right now as we speak, or at least we were this afternoon. But the problems and concerns with neonicotinoids doesn't stop with the seeds and with our food. Unfortunately, one of the critical concerns and impacts is also with our water and our drinking water supplies. Neonicotinoids are very mobile in water, particularly in groundwater. And their use in New York State has increased dramatically over the last 2 decades. And now they're frequently found throughout New York State's water supplies. So what happens is they're highly soluble, they move readily throughout water. They've been found in rivers and streams and aquifer systems and lakes. So that goes to what Dan was saying earlier, that because only 2 to 5% of the seed coatings are actually absorbed by the plant, the other 95% remains in the soil. What happens when something remains in the soil? Well, it leaches out and it enters into nearby streams and water bodies as stormwater runoff. Some of the stats are that the testing of New York surface water by the United States Geological Service showed neonicotinoids in 40% of samples. 40%. That is extremely of concern. That's extremely problematic. The neonicotinoids have been found in tributaries of the Great Lakes. Great Lakes, as many of you know, contain 20% of the Earth's fresh water supply. What are we doing? We're contaminating those Great Lakes with neonicotinoids. So, and it's found that 74% of all the Great Lakes waters sampled had at least one neonicotinoid. So let's remember the neonicotinoids is a class, and there are several different types of them. Also, on Long Island, where I live, one particular neonicotinoid called the imidacloprid, and there will not be a test on this later, has been found to be the most common pesticide found in Long Island's drinking water. That is quite a claim to fame, considering we have 121 pesticides found in Long Island drinking water. So imidacloprid is the #1 chemical pesticide found. So the challenge here is that it's become ubiquitous in our drinking water supply. It's in our food, it's in our soil, and it's in our water supply. That is a lot of exposure for us. These chemicals are not only harmful to humans, they're also harmful to many species in the ecosystem. Particularly imidacloprid is harmful and toxic to fish and crustaceans. If you live downstate, you know that fish and crustaceans are not only a big part of the food supply, but they are also a part of the economy and part of our maritime culture. And yet we're continuing to contaminate them with this chemical. So the good news is, though, as Dan said, we have 3 days left. That's why your words, your actions matter right now. We are all in negotiations between the executive branch and the sponsors, the Senate and the Assembly leadership, to see how we can get this bill over the finish line. We have some glimmers of hope. We're not there yet, but we have 3 days left. And the more you write to the governor, the more incentivized she and her staff are to get this done. So I want to thank everybody for joining today. We appreciate it. We appreciate how much And I want you to know we appreciate how much your activism helps get this, helps lead us to success. So thank you.
Sophia, you want to jump in?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here as we're all anxiously awaiting to see what action Governor Hochul takes on the Birds and Bees Protection Act now that it has been called down to her desk. I'll start by quoting the words of our governor from a press release shared by her office today. I am committed to doing everything in my power to protect the health and well-being of New Yorkers. These words were said in reference to a bill that she signed into law, which will in fact protect the health and well-being of New Yorkers. There are many bills that will do that, including the Birds and Bees Protection Act. We are all deeply concerned by the fact that she has not yet signed this bill, especially given how carefully the legislature negotiated the bill. As Dan said, it is a well-vetted, thoughtful policy. So Dan gave a wonderful presentation and mentioned that neonics are synthetic chemicals that are designed to bind to the abundant nicotine acetylcholine receptors in the nervous system of insects. They overstimulate and eventually kill the insects, which is what it's supposed to do. But we as humans also have these receptors in our brain cells. They play a central role in learning, memory, our moods, sensory processing, pain, planning, judgment, a whole host of roles. The health impacts that are seen from neonic exposure include tremors, cardiac arrest, autism-like symptoms, lower testosterone levels, changes to insulin regulation, and fat metabolism. New York has seen an increased amount of neonics in its surface water, as Adrian mentioned, in the past 15 years. And these levels are, of course, going to be harmful to the wildlife that is exposed to it. The animals drink the contaminated waters, the soil becomes saturated and accumulate the chemicals. Our pollinators get sick, and it is almost impossible to contain the chemical to the area in which it was released. Studies have shown that these neonics have been found in 30% of groundwater samples on Long Island, and unfortunately, chlorination treatment does not remove them from tap water. They've also been found, as Dan mentioned, in the bodies of 95% of pregnant women from a 2022 CDC study, with higher rates being found in Hispanic women, and the rates are rising. That means that babies that are being born to these mothers who already have neonics in their bodies will be born with the disadvantage of having toxic chemicals in their developing bodies, which means that they are likely to have birth defects, neurological challenges, and that is if the pregnancy does not end with a stillbirth. And the science is clear on what will happen to our environment, our pollinators, wildlife species, and our fellow New Yorkers if neonicotinoids continue to contaminate the environment and ultimately our bodies. So again, what our governor said was, I'm committed to doing everything in my power to protect the health and well-being of New Yorkers. And we know that there is no way that allowing toxic neonicotinoid pesticides to continue to contaminate our environment is protecting the health and well-being of New Yorkers. Doing everything in her power to protect the health and well-being of New Yorkers would mean not siding with the chemical industry and disregarding the credible science and research that has shown that it is more beneficial, even to corn, soybean, and wheat crops, to not use neonics at all. So I'm sure all of you on this call already know this, so I'll just reiterate. Neonics are bad. The ban of neonics in these crops is good. And we are incredibly grateful to you all for being here, taking action, putting the pressure on Governor Hochul to let her know how strongly her constituents feel about this bill and the urgency in which it needs to be signed into law. I sincerely hope that Governor Hochul stays true to her word, to her pledge to do everything in her power to protect the health and well-being of New Yorkers, because it is in her power to sign this bill into law. Thank you.
Hey, before Laura jumps in, we reached another goal. So let's go to 1,000 and see if we can't get 1,000 emails out tonight.
Hey, everybody. I want to talk about these issues a little bit from a farmer's perspective, to tell you a little bit about myself. I to an interest in these issues very much because of my family. My mom was a lawyer who practiced environmental law. Grew up hearing a lot about stuff about agricultural runoff and its effects on the Great Lakes when I was a kid. And my dad has been a hobby beekeeper throughout much of my life. And now that he's retired, he's really turning that into a small business. Has a few dozen colonies of bees. So anyways, growing up in that kind of environment, it's not necessarily surprising that I decided to become an organic vegetable farmer. I trained on organic vegetable farms throughout the northeastern United States and then came back to western New York State near Buffalo, where I grew up, to start my farm when I was 21. I've now been running my own farm for 9 years. I do it with my husband, and we have a few seasonal employees. We grow certified organic vegetables primarily for direct market to local consumers. We have a 5-acre farm, which may not sound like a lot, but when you grow intensively, you can grow a lot of food. And we're able to make a living from farming. It's really just a beautiful spot where I am. We have hedgerows on the north and south side of my farm where we have all kinds of birds hanging out, especially a lot of warblers during the spring. My farm always has all kinds of different insect activity. We have monarchs on our milkweed that sprout out throughout the farm and always have different, adults and caterpillars around. We also have swallowtails that like to lay their eggs on our carrot family crops. We rely on both honeybees and a lot of native pollinators, like bumblebees and others, to pollinate our flowering crops like squashes, cucumbers, eggplant, raspberries. We just planted some apple trees. Even the crops that don't necessarily need pollinators as much, but can benefit from them still, can be a real hit with the pollinators. We have so many bumblebees all over our tomatillos, for example. We also rely on other beneficial insects for our farm. Earthworms to cycle nutrients, lacewings and ladybugs to control some pests. We really just try to farm in a way that is in harmony with the natural world, trying to produce healthy food for our community that doesn't really put anything in our ecosystem at risk. But neonicotinoids are a real threat to farms like ours, both organic and conventional, that are providing healthy produce for our communities because of the choices of our neighbors who are growing conventional corn and soy. Because as you've heard, these seed coatings wash off the seeds and move through our water tables. And then plants around my farm can take up these pesticides. And because they're systemic, the entire plant becomes toxic to all these different pollinators and other beneficial insects that are on my farm. And so even though I did not apply these chemicals on my farm, I can still feel the effects on my farm because of this. The governor is facing a lot of pressure, to veto this bill or gut this bill because, supposedly it's bad for farmers, the Birds and Bees Protection Act. But science, as you've heard, science from Cornell, that was commissioned by the State Department of Agriculture to do these studies. And Cornell is, very much in bed with agribusiness. So when Cornell says, this is not helping farmers, this is only hurting farmers, I think you can really take that, finding seriously. So the farmers that these, pesticides are supposed to be helping, this is not helping them anything. It's just an extra expense they're bearing for no reason. And meanwhile, other farmers who are growing produce, whether it's large apple farmers, which are a big part of agriculture in New York State, or small and medium scale vegetable and fruit farmers who are feeding New York City and upstate, we are all suffering because of these pesticides that our other farming neighbors are applying. And I want to point out that, the average age of the American farmer is rising. According to the 2017 Census of Agriculture, the average age was 57. but vegetable farmers are younger than average. And why is that? Because there still is an ability, especially now because of the buy local movement, for us to make a living in farming by selling directly to consumers, just like my husband and I do. And so these very low value uses of land, growing corn and soy is not very lucrative, are threatening the farming livelihoods of farmers like me who actually can make a living from farming and are very directly providing this healthy produce for our communities. So, I really hope that Governor Hochul makes the right choice and, helps protect our, farming communities across the state, as well as all the rest of us humans and, insects and birds and everything across our state.
Hey, we are just 4 emails away from reaching our goal. I want to ask Matthew if you could really quickly to put the QR code up in a big way. I know we have a bunch of folks who joined late, and there are some people who aren't taking actions, and we need all of you to take actions. Oh, we just passed our goal. So that's fantastic. So Matthew, let's see if we can get 1,200. If you've joined late and haven't done this before, that weird looking box on the right is a QR code. If you take out your phone, turn the camera on, point it at the little box, you'll see a link appear on your phone. Click on that link. That'll take you to the actions to tell the governor to do the right thing and protect human health and the environment. So for God's sakes, don't be the person just sitting there not doing anything. Adrienne Esposito can be really mean, and she will come after you. Okay, so
people do say that they're afraid of me. I think it's my 5'2" stature. That's what I think it is.
I think so too, Adrienne. I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff.
So we've got some questions from our audience. This is from Renee. Tim, you correct me wherever I'm wrong. And a first question is, are organizations like the Cornell Lab of Ornithology on board and actively supporting this bill?
Well,
Adrienne?
I think any member of our panel can.
Well, the Cornell Lab isn't really an entity that lobbies. They provide the science, and the advocacy groups provide the lobbying based on science. We have a saying, it's good science and good common sense make for good policy. And so their research, I just want to tell everyone, so 5 years ago, we started on this. And at that time where they were like, oh, wait, can you wait? I see Dan vigorously shaking his head, yes. Wait for Cornell to do this study. So we reluctantly agreed. Cornell does the study. They studied over 1,100 peer-reviewed scientific documents from around the globe. And they came up with a report that said neonicotinoids are, the new DDT. Neonicotinoids do not offer any economical benefit to farmers who use them. Neonicotinoids are no longer necessary. And so we waited for the Cornell study. We based this new bill, which was strategically crafted on the Cornell study. So we used the study, but Cornell doesn't actually do the lobbying with this because they're just not that kind of an entity.
Got it. Thanks, Adrienne, and thanks for that question. Another one is, who is pushing back against the passage of this bill?
Well, I think by and large, it's the chemical industry, right? And you see chemical industry talking points filter through other folks too. The Farm Bureau has also opposed the bill, but there has been, again, I think a lot of misinformation about what is in the bill and what isn't. And I think there was some confusion about what it affected. Again, this bill is so surgical, right? And it's based on this massive report, and not just the massive report, right? Cornell has done ongoing research since the report all over the state, field studies that are finding the exact same thing. We see other academic research. There's a number of big studies that have come out since the Cornell report. They find the exact same thing. We have Quebec and Ontario that have basically eliminated these seed coatings without any problem, without switching to more harmful alternatives. So again, I think a lot of that misinformation is coming from the chemical industry and a lot of the behind the scenes pressure. But when you add it up, I mean, I've never seen a clearer cut case, right, between the interests of New Yorkers, their environment, the agricultural economy for farmers like Laura, for clean water. Really, the only interest on the other side here is the pesticide industry, because if they stop using these seed coatings, they're going to lose money, right? They charge for those seed coatings. They don't give it away for free. They're not a charity. So again, we've seen really intense pressure there. We hope the governor repels that misinformation, right? Relies on the science that the state, again, as Adrian said, told us to wait for. We wanted to listen to the New York's own science, right? Over that of the talking points of Monsanto and Bayer and Syngenta, et cetera.
Thank you, Dan. Next question for the panel. Are there any groups in the medical profession who've come out against neonics? Is that something that's beginning to happen?
Well, I might defer to Sophia on this too, because I know you all work really closely with the Nice Check folks and others, but yeah, there's been a huge outpouring. And actually, Phil Landrigan, who's sort of a giant of children's health, he was instrumental in getting rid of lead in gasoline in the 1970s and other products. He worked to pass his research led to the passage of the Food Quality Protection Act. And that's why we have a limit of how much pesticides you can have in food, because that actually affects children's brains. Up until the 90s, we didn't have limits on pesticides in food. So just a giant of that world wrote an op-ed recently in the New York Daily News. So if you type in Phil Landrigan, neonics, birds and bees, you'll find his piece. It's excellent. But there was a letter from health experts that has gone to the governor on several times. Landrigan is on that. A number of leading New York health experts too, children's health experts are on that. So the health community, I think, has been really active on this, and they're only getting louder and louder as we get more data in about how much these pesticides are building up in people's bodies.
Thank you, Dan. What is to stop farmers from just using pesticides that are even worse?
I think there's a couple of things going on that we can be confident that things will get better if the Birds and Bees Act is signed into law. First off, a lot of farmers are not even choosing, really. When I say it's my neighbor's choices, it's really kind of a passive choice, because with 100% of corn seed, conventional corn seed on the market, and at least half of the, soy seed that's on the market conventionally being treated with neonics, farmers aren't necessarily seeking this out. This is just how their corn is coming, and they may not even be paying that much attention. So some people who are using neonics will, when it's not on their seed anymore, just not be using neonics because they never were really actively choosing to use them in the first place. And we have seen in Ontario and Quebec, which are ahead of us on phasing out neonics, that farmers are switching to less harmful alternatives, which are currently on the market, and by the time the Birds and Bees Protection Act go into effect, will be cheaper than they are now. And Cornell is also developing planting date tools that they can work with farmers about when to plant their corn, so they don't even have any need for any kind of pesticide at all. So any farmer that is worried about this problem and seeking out solutions may be able to switch to a total non-chemical solution. And I know Dan has a lot more information that I'm sure he'd love to jump in.
Well, yeah, I think one of the things that, again, what the science shows is that you don't need any replacement chemicals for these pesticides. Right now, farmers are spending money on these treatments that are not providing economic benefits, on average. So, there's that, but there's what's even more convincing is the real world, right? So Europe got rid of neonic-coated corn and soybean seeds in 2013. So they've been doing it for a decade there without issue. And just over the border in Quebec and Ontario, since 2019, they've effectively phased out the use of these neonate coatings. And again, we haven't seen any associated crop loss. We haven't seen any switching to more harmful chemical alternatives or switching to more harmful farming practices. I mean, we do see some switching to newer classes of chemicals that are less harmful to bees, birds, and people. Again, what the science shows is you don't need to do that at all. And a lot of farmers have just gotten rid of the insecticide coating altogether, right? So a lot of farmers have gotten rid of it altogether. Some farmers have switched to newer chemicals that are less problematic for the environment. That's what we've seen. And again, in Canada, even the folks who've switched to those newer chemicals, we see those rates go down and down every year because I think people are realizing you just don't need these things at all. You don't need any insecticide coating. It's not helping you. You're just wasting money.
So
Yeah,
I just want to jump in too and say, I remember when we first started using imidacloprid on Long Island because they came in, they wanted to use it for something, which I won't go into, and we asked questions. At that time, I served on a pesticide review committee established by Suffolk County. And we asked questions. Will this be mobile in drinking water? They said no. Will this be taken up not only by the roots of the tree, they were using it around trees at the time, and then get into the leaves, and then when the leaves fall, it'll get into the soil. They said absolutely not. That'll never happen. None of this will happen. It only took 5 years from the time they started using it to the time we started finding it in the groundwater. That's how mobile it was. Everything they said was either a lie or wrong. I don't know if it was intentional. I don't know, but it was wrong. And so I can only imagine they told the farmers the same thing when the farmers started using this. So as we know more, we need to do better. And I think farmers are a very sophisticated bunch. I think they want to grow food, they want to be successful, but they don't want to poison the earth. And I think as they have more options, like untreated seeds, they're going to migrate and navigate to those options that are less poisonous to the earth. Because I think in the end, they're going to want the same things everybody else wants. They want to be healthy and they want to succeed. And this option provides them to do both.
And also, farmers can be very cost sensitive. And so, a cheaper option is usually very attractive. That's, an unnecessary coating is making money for the pesticide industry, not really helping farmers. So if they can get the same result for a cheaper amount of money, farmers are usually very interested in that.
excellent. Question, is the Farm Bureau just something that the chemical industry is hiding behind? It feels a little like the NRA and gun manufacturers.
I think the Farm Bureau, gets less representative of the farmers the higher up you go. I think at the county level, there's a lot of involvement from a lot of local farmers. And oftentimes, at the county level, the Farm Bureau, oftentimes is, has a lot of, is speaking for the farmers or, very much has a lot of farmer input. But I think the higher up you go in the Farm Bureau, up to the state and federal level, you are looking at a lot more of the interests of corporations in the agribusiness sphere and less so at the interests of farmers.
Got it. In New York, 2 million people drink out of hand-dug wells. Since those people presumably are low wealth individuals, isn't this also an environmental justice issue?
I'll take that. We have millions of people drink out of private wells, also called hand wells, which means they're not hooked up to a municipal drinking water supply. They do not get tested as mandated 4 times per year, as all of your drinking water does get tested if you have a public water drinking system. So we don't even know what they're drinking. And some private wells are in wealthy areas, and some private wells are in very rural, low-income areas. And all those people are at risk, every single one. In fact, I just looked at data today for private wells in agricultural communities on Long Island, and they have the most nitrates. There was a nitrate survey down. So I can only assume if the fertilizer is getting into the well, the pesticide, which is even more mobile than the nitrate, is getting into the private wells. So absolutely true. Good question.
Great. The
And
government.
I just want to add one more thing with regards to it being an environmental justice issue. Poor people and people of color, they also tend to live in areas where they're close to like polluting facilities, environmental hazards. So there is intersectionality when it comes to where they live and what they eat and what they're exposed to. So this is just another it's another addition to the burdens that they face, the cumulative burdens that they face. And we have to ensure that we're removing these toxic chemicals, removing all of these sources of harm to people who do not choose to live in areas where they are exposed to polluting facilities, environmental hazards, toxic chemicals, and so forth.
Thank you. The governor had to know how contentious this bill is, at least in her own mind. So why do you think she put off dealing with it until the last minute? Doesn't she have hundreds of bills on her desk right now that need attention?
No one knows what's in the mind of a governor, but I don't know. I mean, we have a saying, 2 weeks in Albany is like a lifetime in dog years. So many of the contentious bills they put off to the end of the year. This one, they really put off to the end of the year. She called for a couple bills right before Thanksgiving. She didn't call for ours. Those bills she vetoed. We called it the Thanksgiving Massacre. I mean, we didn't do that out loud, but we did that within our own ranks. So, we don't know the answer to that question. And yes, they knew it was contentious. Yes, they knew we were all dug in. But I just want everyone to know we've been dug in on this bill this year like never before. We have been meeting with DEC. We have been up to date on meeting. I mean, up to Albany. We've been meeting with the sponsors, meeting with the governor's office. I actually was at a governor's event 2 weeks ago and was asked to speak. And when you ask to speak, you get like 60 seconds with the governor. And I used my 60 seconds to talk to her about the birds and bees bill. And she said, "Yes, Adrian, we're looking at all the bills." So it was not warm and fuzzy, but they are very aware of the stress and the contentiousness on both sides. And, we're off and running.
I do want to point out, should this really be considered? I mean, obviously it's being treated as a contentious bill, but should it really be thought of by the governor as such? Like, this is a bill that passed the legislature and the assembly, the Senate and the assembly by broad margins. This is an environmental bill that in this day and age had the support of many Republicans in our state government. So that, Governor Hochul is, seems so wary to sign it, just is kind of baffling. And especially, with how much the public really cares about bees and other pollinators, it's just baffling to me.
Yeah, and I want to follow that up because Dan and I and Caitlin and everybody said to the governor's staff, who supports this bill? The public. The public supports this bill. Thousands of people have written her personal letters, emails, called, they phoned in. People, the general public, love this bill. And, when you're getting thousands and thousands of members of the public on one hand saying, sign the bill, I want clean water, I want to protect bees. We can't save the planet if we don't save the bees. You're right. Why is that controversial? Are they getting thousands of people, regular people, writing it to the governor saying, keep my food poisoned? No one's saying that to the governor. So when you weigh it out like that, I agree 100% with Laura. But in Albany, it's a different world, right? It is true that these corporations have a lot of power. They have a lot of access because they have a lot of money. And so we, as activists, we fight that money with the public's voice. And that's why your voice is so important. We can't match their dollars, but we can match it with the voice of the public. And that's what we do. And hopefully we do well.
Thank you. Another question, because neonics runs off into the soil and affects the health of the soil. Aren't they also affecting the soil's ability to draw down carbon from the atmosphere? So isn't this a climate issue as well?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think likely we'll find out that it is. It's a little too early to tell in terms of, you know, where the science is on that. And I think some new studies are coming out. But what I've seen is there's some indication that yes, neonics are affecting the soil's ability to store carbon at the microbial level. But what's even clearer, right, is that it's killing all of the beneficial insects that Laura mentioned, right? It's not just bees that are getting hammered by these things. It's the good bugs that eat the pest insects, right? Lacewings and wasps and so on. But it's also the soil insects, right? Earthworms and nematodes and all sorts of all the critters, millipedes that break down all of the, you know, organic matter and turn that into healthy soil. We know those insects are getting hammered. So depending on what you're talking about, yeah, we see some real big impacts to soil health. And I think, again, we're on the climate side, there's not enough studies yet. People just haven't looked at it. But I think what you'll find is when those studies come out, I wouldn't be surprised if there's that connection. It's sort of intuitive.
Thank you, Dan. From Jorg, please repeat the name of the bill and what is its number?
Birds and Bees Protection Act, A 7640 S 1856A.
But honestly, if you just say Birds and Bees Protection Act, they will know.
Right.
They are acutely aware of the bill right now.
Yeah, they know the bill number. Yeah.
Yes.
Judy is asking what happens if the governor neither signs nor vetoes?
It dies. It dies a painful, quick death, like the bees.
All right. It sounds like we can switch to final thoughts from the panel. Is that right, Tim?
Yeah. That would be great.
Because we're at about 57 after the hour.
Dan, do you have a final thought?
Just how important it is that everybody's here tonight and taking action. I think I can't say it better than Adrian. This is the power that we have, right? We have people power. The other side has money, and we're never going to match that money. I wish we could. It would make my job a lot easier.
Oh my God, how great would that be, Dan? Could you imagine?
Oh my God, it would be amazing. But we don't, right? We have people power. So that's why it's so important that you take action, sending those emails, maybe calling the governor. This is the final 3 days, right? This is the end game. I think we do have a shot, but we need to keep the pressure on through the next couple of days. I know it's right before the holidays, not a great time, but it's just so important. And thank you everyone again for coming out here tonight.
Laura, you want to throw a last thought in?
I think I'll close with what I did last time, just pointing out that, you know, there's only a couple of big agricultural states that are also likely to pass progressive environmental legislation relating to agriculture, and that is New York and California. So New York has a really important opportunity with this bill to kind of lead the way for the nation and inspire a lot of other states to follow in our footsteps to protect the birds and the bees and all kinds of other creatures across our country from neonics.
Thank you. Sophia?
Yeah, thank you to everyone for taking action and, you know, just keep the pressure on, remind the governor that she does have an obligation to protect the health and well-being of New Yorkers, as she said that she will do. And we have the people power to keep putting the pressure, remind her of her obligation to her constituents. This bill will protect not only the birds, not only the bees and the farms, it will protect the children, the most vulnerable group in our population.
Adrian?
So the most powerful thing in a democracy is showing up, speaking up, and a pen. So if you could just do one of those three things on this bill, write the email, make a phone call. You don't need to show up. It's too late. But that has meaning, a lot of meaning. And we do have a shot. You know, Dan and I were on the phone today. There's 3 issues, actually 2. We should really call it 2 because one is not really that big of an issue. And we're have 3 days to negotiate these 2 issues. We have a shot. The more emails they get, the better it looks for us. Does that say 1,119? That'll help our negotiations tomorrow a lot. So we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And I want to jump in really quickly. I want to thank the panel. Some of the panel has been here. Dan Raichel, I think, now lives on this Zoom site. As you can see, he had to sell his apartment. He's living in a basement, and there's someone in a pit, and he wants them to put the lotion in the basket. But I do, sorry, I've lost my mind. I really want to thank all of you guys for working so hard. And more than that, because it's right before the holidays, I really want to thank all of the folks who've shown up and have taken action. And if you didn't take action, all of these actions are going to be on the Climate Action Now app tomorrow. And while we got 1,120, that number will grow substantially tomorrow because more people who aren't here tonight are going to keep using the app. We'll keep taking actions on the app. I want to mention also on January 16th, we're going to have a Climate Action Now party for, I don't know quite what we're calling this, sort of the least you can do party, or the duh party, which is for a bunch of legislation that should have passed last year. Stuff like maybe we shouldn't include toxins in menstrual products, like really incredibly obvious laws. So we're going to have an action party on that on the 16th. On the 18th is a Save Our Forests action party, which will also be here. Want to wish you guys all a fantastic holiday. And my big Christmas gift was Jeff Perry. Jeff, you want to say anything to close us out?
No, I was so moved listening to this, and I am a cheerleader of you guys because, like you say, it is rallying people to understand what's going on that can make a difference. So a great stocking stuffer and putting stuff under the tree is that it sounds like the legislative process counts on us going, no, it's Christmas, leave me alone. So let's sort of not do that and give ourselves and our children and our grandchildren the gift of, no, we're going to pay attention, and we're going to pay attention till the deadline. Thank you guys for letting me be here.
And Dan, please give the person in the pit the gift of not having to return the lotion. Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays, all. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for
Sorry,
saving the
Dan.
bees.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Much
Yeah,
appreciated.
buddy.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you all very much.
All right. Bye. Thanks, Sophia. Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you again.
Bye.